Hello there, everyone. Today I'm going to be making a short video talking about a Unity project that I made a couple of months ago. I've wanted to get this on video and have like a bit of a commentary documenting it for a while now. Partially for my own sake, just that I have a record of it and I can look back at this and see how I did things. But also just in case anyone else wants to do something like this. You'll see in a minute what I'm talking about. There's a lot of ways to go about this specific project or this specific problem. This is just the way that I did it, and it ended up working pretty nicely. So a little background on it. This started out as a personal project. I really like the concept of controlling magnets in video games. I've always wanted to play a game like that, and there really aren't many. So I kind of started a Unity project just to see it, like if I could get it done, to see if the way I thought it worked could work. And that ended up going pretty well. So I realized that I could take this, and I actually ended up turning it into a project for school, and I turned this in as a final. So first, I'm gonna just play it. I'm gonna kind of walk you through it, kind of show everything that the game has to offer, or the demo. And then after that, I'm going to show the Unity setup, and I'm going to show a bit of the code just so that people understand how this works and what to do. And like I said, this is just the way that I decided to go about this problem. There's probably a bunch of ways, but this is the way that I did it. So starting off, we have a couple of scenes that we can choose from. I'm just going to start with the test scene because it's the most basic. Obviously, we have a very barren Unity plane, and the thing about this is you can left click to activate negative polarity and right click to activate positive polarity. So you're actually controlling magnetic fields in this case. Play around with magnets and control magnetism. Pretty basic. And as you can see, we have some objects here that are magnetic, a red and a blue, or a positive and a negative magnet. And so clicking left and right, you can see how these magnets interact with each other. So for example, like clicking negative pulls the blue magnet towards me but pushes away the red magnet, and vice versa. And so you can see I can switch between which magnetic field I kind of have activated, and I can play with these magnets in a couple of different ways, and I can move them around or push them or pull them, or however, they're magnets. It's pretty easy to understand. And over here I just have a couple of basic Mixamo models because I wanted to show that you can really do this with anything. Like I created a magnet script that I'll show in a minute, that you can just apply to any game object really, and it'll behave as such as long as you assign which polarity it is. That's really all you need. And so the one thing that I think is really cool about this is I worked into the magnet script. As you can see over here, these are magnets with much bigger masses than the player, and as such they have much bigger fields as well. So you can see like it affects me from a much farther distance because the field that this magnet is generating is much larger due to its mass. And also, if you'll notice, because it's bigger, the player is having the force done to them instead of the magnet. So like with these smaller magnets, because they weigh less than the player, they're having forces added upon them. They're either moving to or from the player. But with these larger magnets, the player is actually pushed and pulled kind of in relation to them, and you can sort of kind of bounce around between these two because you're playing in between where these fields overlap. So this is just the basic functionality of the magnets. I wanted to add a really simple kind of playground just to show you what it's capable of. But if you remember, we have multiple scenes. I wanted to also show some like game design applications of this. How can I use this mechanic that I've made to like make some games? So like this one is a very basic puzzle. We have a couple of things to consider. We have these big magnets that are generating, like I said, these big magnetic fields that I think at this size they probably encompass the entire playing area. But to beat this little puzzle, we have to activate the buttons with the corresponding magnets. So basically, we just have to put the blue magnets on the blue buttons and the red magnets on the red buttons, as you can see. And so at first it seems kind of simple. You just push or pull or do whatever, but you'll notice that because all of these are sitting next to these much larger magnets, it kind of presents a bit of a challenge. Like, how do I move this without moving this, and how do I do this without moving myself? So it takes a bit of finesse in order to kind of get this all to work, especially once you like start getting them all in place, because like I said, every action you do, the magnets all interact with one another. So let me see if I can get this without causing too much problem. Yeah, see, it pulls off the blue, so I have to kind of drag it over here without. There we go. All right. So that's, like I said, just a very simple puzzle application of this mechanic. But the one I really like is the platformer. I kind of made a very simple linear platformer here. And if you remember, the larger magnets actually apply the force to the player instead of the magnet itself. So we can use the magnets to launch off, sort of, and the idea behind this was to sort of create a situation where the player has to like pretty rapidly recognize which should they push or should they pull, should they do negative or positive, like what do they need for this situation in order to cross the gap. And as you can see, it's a little difficult. I definitely was better at this when I first made this. I haven't played it in a while, so we'll see if I can do it without too much trouble, which doesn't seem to be happening, but I'm sure you understand the idea and the application behind this. It was really fun to make this part specifically. I think there is a lot of fun stuff you can do with this. This portion in particular was very much inspired by Super Magnetic Neo, which a lot of this project was inspired by that game. That's one of the few games I can think of that really tackles this concept, at least in a similar way that I did. So that's really all the demo is. It's just those three scenes, which are, again, all of those are using the same scripts, the same core mechanic, and all this is just different setups and different applications of that same idea, of that same mechanic. So I'll show a bit of the script and the setup. So the thing that you have to understand, and this is like where a lot of this is very Unity dependent, the main way this works is that each magnet has a sphere collider that is a trigger, and that is basically acting as its magnetic field. And the player also has, where is it? Yeah, the player also has their sphere collider. And so if these two colliders are overlapping and the player's sphere collider is set to the right polarity, either positive or negative, then the game runs some logic that determines what the polarity is, what should happen, should this particular magnet move forward or away from you, and that's on a on trigger stay basis, I believe. I'm going to show you some of the code here. The main one I want to talk about is just the magnet script. This is the main one where like the magnet logic happens. Yeah, right, on trigger stay. So determines if the player is within a magnetic field of this magnet. And you'll see there's a lot of pretty basic if statement logic determining if the polarity is positive, 1, and if the polarity of the magnet is true or false, right? Basically saying, should the player be attracting or repelling this specific magnet, right? Based on what it is. The attraction logic here, there are a couple like different ways to do it. This is a way that's not being used because this way ended up being simpler and giving more the effect of what I wanted. But you can also see here, this is where the rigid body mass is being taken into consideration for like whether or not it pushes or pulls. So that's the attraction logic. The repulsion logic is actually it's using this alternate method specifically because the repulsion logic ended up being a lot more tricky than the attraction logic, and that's mostly just because vector 3 dot move towards is a really simple way to get it done, and like I said, it ended up being the best for what I wanted. But it took a surprising amount of work to get the repulsion logic to work basically the same way that vector 3 dot move towards works. I just kind of had to deconstruct it into its own thing and do it in reverse, obviously. So that's the basis of the code. As you can see, it really just takes the transform and the magnet and the position of the magnet and the position of the player and moves it. That's obviously just move towards. But for the repulsion logic, you have to take, you have to make vectors and normalize them in relation to the positions of the players. So it's like I said, it's basically just move towards, but like a lot more deconstructed. Let's see if I can. Yeah, the player controller. So this is the other thing that's like pretty important to it. As you can see, it has the field for the player and the polarity for the player. It goes back and forth between 1 and -1, 1 being positive and -1 being negative. And this is basically, it's all very simple Unity player controller stuff. It's like, this is all just movement. This doesn't really matter. But this is basically just getting the mouse input and telling the field to be enabled. Because like I said, because it's on trigger stay, so like if the magnets are overlapped, or I'm sorry, if the fields are overlapped, but the player's field is not on currently, because the magnets fields are always on because they're magnets. But like if the player's magnetic field is not currently on, don't do anything. If it is, do this for every frame. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, like I said, this was a very simple way to do it. It's not the only way to do it. Looking at my code now, like I only wrote this a couple months ago, but looking at it now, even now I can be like, oh yeah, there were definitely better ways to do this. But I think the basis is still pretty solid, and I think the end product is something I'm pretty proud of, and I wanted to share, like I said, in case anyone else is curious and wanted to do something like this. I think it's a really interesting idea. I think it has a lot of interesting game applications aside from like the scenes that I created to show it off. I think it's a really cool idea, and like I said, I just wanted to share it. So thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.